Welcome along to Tweet Street Scotland Occupied. I'm Cinnamon Bridges, aka Peter. With me this evening, back to the usual co-host, JB. How you doing?
Not bad, Peter. How are you keeping, pal?
Aye, all right, mate. All right. We've got another couple of really interesting guests today. We've got members of the Alba Party Youth Division. We have Christine Hendry, and we also have Robert. Robert, what's your surname?
Reid.
Robert Reid.
R-E-I-D.
Right, because it doesn't appear on my screen, it's just your first name. So I would like to say hi to you both. Hello.
How you doing?
Hello.
Right, and we're going to come to ladies first on this occasion. We'll ask Christine, can you give us a wee introduction, a wee bit about yourself, and why you get into politics at such a young age?
So my name's Christina. I work as an assistant psychologist in children's mental health, and I've been involved in politics for a very long time. Politics is in my family, so kind of grown up with it. I was a member of another political party for many years, since the age of 12, and for me, it's independence is the most important thing. I've always campaigned for independence. I was in the Scottish Youth Parliament when I was younger, very much feel it's important for young people to have their voices heard. And when Alba started, I joined straight away because, like I said before, independence is like what I think is the most important thing for Scotland and for Scotland's young people. So I stood in Lothian as a regional candidate in the election in May, and I stood on the platform about things like getting young people's voices out there, and things that are important to young people, like our education, our employment, mental health, climate change, things like that. So I think it's really important for young people to be involved in politics and how our country runs, and that's why I'm involved in Alba Youth.
Thank you very much, Christina. Robert, over to you, mate. Same question.
I'm Robert Reid. I'm from Perth, but I study in Aberdeen. I study politics and international relations. I guess my kind of passion for politics actually stemmed from the independence referendum. I was just too young to vote at the time. I was 15 years old. And after that, I became really engaged, really interested in the debate. And when I was, I think, 17 or 18, I joined the SNP. Didn't quite get too involved in the kind of youth movement with the SNP, but over the years, I went to study politics at Aberdeen in my final year now. When Alex launched the Alba Party in March this year, I was actually studying in Florida, and I don't think he'd finished his press conference before I'd joined the party. But yeah, a lot of similar things to Christina. I really like the party kind of steps we're going in, especially involving young people, and I think the group of young people we've got in the party at the moment have been fantastic. So I think it's quite an exciting year ahead for the Alba Party.
All right. Did you get yourself a jumper when you were in Florida? Aye.
I did. One or two.
John, over to you, mate.
Yeah, good to see young people involved in it because, well, young people including myself, because they are the future, as they say.
As they say, mate, as they say. Right, so I'm going to ask a question here. What can we expect to see from the youth division, short, mid and long term? And again, we'll come to Christina first of all on that.
Yes, so I think because the party's still quite new, it's not even a year old yet, the youth kind of movement of it is evolving with the party, and we're growing kind of week on week. Short term, we are looking to keep getting young people involved, leading up to kind of what, I don't know what you class as short term, but leading up to short midterm, which would be the May election. And we're very much keen on young people getting involved where they are locally. And we're kind of looking to be a movement that supports young people, creates an opportunity for discussion or debate. Debate's never a bad thing. And so kind of short term, that's midterm, that's what we're looking to do, help with the campaign. Long term, kind of short, mid and long term is independence is what we're pushing for. And that's why we're all in the Alba Party, and that's why a lot of young people have joined, a lot of young people have approached us, some from different parties who have come across, some from no party, never been in a party, some never even campaigned. So I think as a whole, that's what we're looking to do. encourage young people to get involved in politics and things that affect them, and encourage them to look at independence and why it's so important for Scotland and for Scotland's young people.
Sounds excellent. I'm sold. I'm need to try and get some of my kids involved if that's the case, because independence is, as John and I both agree, is the ultimate. It's what Scotland needs to thrive. Robert, what's your hopes and for the Alba Party youth for short mid? I know they'll be similar to Christina, because we wouldn't have exactly opposite ends of the spectrum, but some people differ slightly on what their personal input's going to be short, mid and long term. So over to you, mate.
Yeah, well, I think quite a few members of Alba Youth have, as like Christina said, have been involved in youth movements in other parties. And I think a common problem in movements like that is they become almost cliquey, kind of centralised, almost separate from the party itself. And we kind of want to try to stay away from that. We're encouraging local members to get involved with their local authority campaign units. I've been doing so in North East, leafleting for Councillor Lee Wilson, who we have up there, who's hopefully going to be re-elected in May.
Hope so.
Fingers crossed anyway. And I think it's not particularly not a criticism of the SNP, but probably wider party politics, and because you've seen it in New Labour, but when a party becomes that big and kind of so mainstream, it attracts, I think, the wrong individuals at times, and perhaps people that are interested in politics that want to get a job in government or a nice staffer job, kind of see the SNP as an obvious option. In Alba Youth, we're trying to move away from creating like a mini politicians, feel like. I think, of course, we want young people's voices to be heard, and we do have some candidates standing in this year's election, but it's much more about getting people involved in the kind of grassroots campaign, and creating an environment that is conducive to people getting involved. Because, like I said before, in the YSI for the SNP, I didn't really feel it was a group that was welcoming enough and made you feel confident enough to go out and speak to people and engage and work with them. Whereas I think the first time we all met in person was at conference, and it was such a fantastic environment, really friendly, and it really kind of inspired me to kick on with Alba Youth. So I think that's what I get out of it, and that's what I've seen other people get out of it so far anyway.
I have to admit, the social media presence of the Alba Party since their formation has grown and grown and grown. And John and I have said, like on previous podcasts, there used to be an element of ISP where you've seen a lot of that. The Alba Party, when they came in, for me, they've kind of overtaken, which is pleasing to see. I would also like to see alternatives there as well. Being an independent supporter, you want to have as much focus on that from all areas. And for one reason or another, folk might not like SNP, Alba, ISP. It may be Greens. I don't see Greens as a party of independence. That's just my own personal opinion. John, what's your thoughts on what both Christina and Robert have said?
It's chuffed to hear what they're doing and how they're getting involved. I'd like to ask a wee question. What do they think of what we're being told about an independence referendum in 2023? Christina, can I ask you that first?
So I'm not sure if maybe it's pessimism or maybe it's just trying to not get hopeful. But
right,
I have seen, many of us have seen promise after promise and mention of this independence referendum time after time, and it feels like they just keep moving things backwards. And I think many of us are itching to go, especially looking at the state of the government in Westminster we have, and especially given the pandemic and the recovery that Scotland needs, and Scotland needs its own recovery. I think so many of us want independence now. We want it to be a focus now. It doesn't feel like that. So independence referendum 2023, I mean, I'm not going to say it's not going to happen, but I don't see it, and I'm quite disappointed.
And the final part of that, second part of that question is, would you vote for independence in that supposed referendum in 2023?
I would always support independence. I think it would depend, because if independence is pushed as an idea for one party to then forever lead Scotland, that's not what independence is about for me. Independence for me is, like you say, about a choice, multiple parties, multiple voices. So it makes me sad to say, but the state of Scotland in the past few years is quite upsetting, and it's quite scary looking at, I mean, women's rights and things. So I'd like to say yes, I'd always support Scottish independence, but it's a difficult one because I'm quite worried for the future in Scotland under current.
I can appreciate what you're saying there, and I know what you're worrying about, but as you've said about what the current situation Scotland's currently in with the United Kingdom, we're heading to an authoritarian state, so surely it's within everyone's best interest, even if they've got to be the issues with the SNP, they should be used as a vehicle to get independence. Then it's up to other parties, whether it be Alba or others, to come forward and put a new political agenda front and centre after independence is
I would hope, leading up to an independence referendum, I would hope, maybe naively, that the SNP would open up and see that it's not about one party, and independence is about Scotland and everybody in Scotland. So no matter what your party, you can be Labour, you can be a Tory, you can support independence. So I would hope that leading up to a referendum, the SNP really open it up and they detach themselves as the independence movement and they open it up to everybody. And I think that is, because some people are from no party, and I think that's important. Independence is not just about a political party or a political party, it's about everybody. So I hope that's what I'd hope to see, and that's what I'll be campaigning for in the independence movement, and I hope there will be a wider independence movement. Because I don't want, some people in the SNP seem to think independence is all about the best interests of the SNP. It's not, it's about Scotland, and the SNP should step aside and realise that.
No, the same question to you, Robert.
I think no matter what, I'll be voting for independence because I think it's the best for the people of Scotland. But following on from that final point, I think Alex Salmond also noted in 2014, the run-up to the independence referendum, the real shift and real change in fortunes for the S movement was when it opened up, or it became more than just the SNP. It was when all groups, so the SSP, Solidarity, people of no party, Women for Independence, Asians for Independence, that's when the real grassroots movement. So any future referendum must include that. And quite frankly, the politicians at the top table need to act like adults, actually. I think in terms of actually a referendum in 2023, I think it's a pipe dream, to be honest. Like you said, Peter, the Green Party, you'd have hoped, being the kind of the party alongside the SNP creating this government, being pro-independence, be pushing for a referendum, really holding them to account. That's certainly what Alba would have done if they were in the position. But the Green Party are far too obsessed with other politics, and it's not green politics. But I've still got friends in the SNP, and I've spoken to a prominent activist in Glasgow who has good connections, good friends in HQ, party headquarters, and he'd said to me that nobody seriously thinks it's going to happen in 2023. That's just what is being said at the moment. It'll probably be 2026. I didn't even have anything to say to him, to be honest, because one thing that really annoys me is when politicians mislead people just in order to gain their votes, and I see no other explanation, and that's what's happened in the past 5 or 6 years with the SNP. Hopefully I'm wrong, hopefully they prove me wrong, but I just can't quite see it.
I just can't see her getting away with it as she's doing what they're doing. She says 2020, I think she's boxed into a corner now. She's got away with it for so long for her doubters. I don't think she can come away and say 2023 and oh no, it's going to be. She won't get away with that. And I'm not a member of any party, but I don't think she can get away with that. I really don't. got to, she's boxed herself into a corner. So I can't see her not being able to stay in power and not deliver in 2020. That's my personal view, like, but I can't see her out of that.
If there's no referendum in 2023, like she said, I can't see how any independent supporter worth their salt would vote for the party again in 2026. That'd be 10 years after the Brexit vote. 10 years, and we're still talking about this. It's unthinkable, actually.
Aye. I refer it to, like, try and refer it back to a football team. If you're a football manager that wasn't delivering, they only get so long, and then it's time for them to go, regardless of how popular they may be amongst their fans, because it's not about that person. It's about the end goal, and the end goal, the carrot that's always been there is independence, and it's just moved along. Opinions. Christina, I'm going to come back to you because you said something about women's rights, and Tweet Street have been doing a Not With My Child forum on kids' rights due to the introduction of the Gender Recognition Act and how it will impact women, and ultimately how it then will impact children. What's your thoughts on the EHRC's announcement yesterday? Have you seen it? Are you aware of it?
No, you'll have to let me know. I didn't get in work yesterday till midnight, so.
Right. Well, you're working hard on the campaign. The EHRC have come out in support of women's rights as they are, and in opposition to the Gender Recognition Act that is being proposed by the Scottish Government. The Scottish Government today, and Nicola Sturgeon today, has said that she still backs the Gender Recognition Act in its the form that it was supposed to be introduced, and that the EHRC have changed their stance. So, given your thoughts on women's rights, do you think that the Gender Recognition Act, in the form that the Scottish Government are planning to introduce it, is acceptable?
No. And to be honest, I'd like to see what the Scottish Government, because they've said the consultation they've done was in support of this, but they've never actually published anything on the public's opinion. And just from speaking to people who say they have no interest in politics, speaking to friends, speaking to other women especially, when they've heard snippets about what could be happening, they're like, wait, what? Like, and it's kind of, it feels like it's kind of come from nowhere. It feels like there's not actually been, obviously it's been a consultation, but if that's not been published, it feels like it's not actually been public support, but they're trying to push it that way. Yep. I think it's quite sad sometimes, because I think it feels like people are being pinned against each other and pushed to one way or the other, and it's very much me versus you, when really it doesn't have to be. I think a lot of voices in this are kind of on the same wavelength, but I think a lot of people are being portrayed in a certain way, and I think there's far much more that could be done and discussed so that more people feel safe and in any way, and more people are more comfortable with what's being proposed and what's being discussed. So I think people have been shut out. I think also the government haven't been meeting with everybody that I won't say either side, because I don't think there should be sides. I don't think they've been meeting on people of different opinions. I think they've been very selective of who they've had government discussions with, and that's one thing I really don't like, because no matter what your opinion, as the government, your job is to speak to everybody and include everybody and listen to everybody's concerns, whether or not in that party you agree with them or not. So I'm quite concerned going forward, and I do think this is kind of being done slightly on the sly, but I do think more people are having their eyes opened to seeing what this could mean.
Yeah, and just to tie back in on the answer that you were giving to John's about the independence question, would that be the main reason that if an independence referendum come up with the conditions that you feel that the SNP might try to run with, rather than including all the other parties, they just include the people that they feel are in support of them? would that be something that would possibly deter you in a independence referendum from voting for independence?
I don't think I could ever say I'd vote against independence. I can't even imagine doing that. I feel like I always would vote for independence, but it's something that would make me more wary, more concerned going forward, because for me, that's not what independence is. It's not about one idea and that's pushed to everybody. For me, independence is about more like we all have a voice and we all have a say, because Scotland's been ignored for so long. And it would be quite unfortunate if then to go independence, we ignore ourselves, we ignore people that we disagree with. I don't think it should be about that. And I think you can have different opinions, but there should be an open debate about it. And it would concern me that there maybe isn't a debate going into the independence referendum, or maybe things aren't completely as clear as they should be, which is why I would hope that the independence referendum wouldn't be led by one party. And I never think it should be. Like, even in 2014, I didn't think it should be led by one party, and I was a member of that party. I think it's more than that. So I would hope that going forward that things open up a bit, but I've not been very convinced of otherwise lately.
Yeah, I think everybody's opinion is valid. So for the First Minister to actually say that women's opinions are not valid in this, I think you've got it wrong, First Minister. Robert, it's the same question to you, mate.
Yeah, say I'm not a woman.
Obviously.
Perhaps I come at this from a different perspective, I guess. Yeah, it might not feel or resonate as strongly with me, but I think just on a simple note of how ridiculous the plans are for self-ID, I think actually works in the SNP's favour most of the time, because the idea of self-ID and how people can just identify from one day to the next what gender they are is so ridiculous that when most people hear people talking about this, they kind of think, no, that's nonsense. That's obviously not what's going to happen. And I think that's how they've got away with it for so long. But I don't think the SNP or leadership actually really care what people think. They don't actually even care what the membership thinks. I don't think this has ever been put to a vote at conference. It's something that's been decided upon at the head table and been told, like a plan B for independence, that the conference doesn't need to discuss this, doesn't need to talk about this. I think opinion polling you've seen is a very unpopular policy as well. So I think it will pass eventually, because I think there's enough Labour voters, Labour members of Parliament and SNP members of Parliament, Lib Dems and Greens obviously. So it will pass, and I think as the kind of consequences of that, when people's children are losing out on sports places at schools, when somebody's sister or daughter is in prison and has to share a cell with a man, that's when people will start to wake up and say, well, hold on, how on earth did this happen? But I don't know if it'll be plain sailing for the SNP. I think people like Kate Forbes, Michelle Thompson, other members in the Scottish Parliament are actually quite vocal against this, or becoming more vocal and speaking out against it. So there may be issues there, especially with Kate Forbes being seen as kind of the successor to Nicola Sturgeon. So the longer this goes on, if independence isn't, or a referendum delivered next year, pressure goes on Nicola Sturgeon, you could see the SNP change leader, somebody like Kate Forbes, and I think this will be really put in the back burner. Despite what I hope will happen, but I've got no crystal ball. So.
Good. Right. My preference would be Joanna Cherry, somebody that's actually prepared to fight. But that's just me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share a wee screen share on what Nicola Sturgeon says about the GRA today, just so that you've got a wee idea. Right, I need to remember to share the sound, John. Right, just this is a running theme. I forget to do it almost every week. I'm getting better. Right, and I'll put us just minimum while this is on.
First Minister. Well, I note the letter that was received yesterday from the Equality and Human Rights Commission. The other thing I note is that it actually represents a significant change in the position of the Equalities and Human Rights Commission. It responded to both of the Scottish Government's previous consultation. In its response to the 2017 consultation, it said this: the Gender Recognition Act 2004 is far removed from reflecting best practice and has a significant negative impact on the lived experience of trans people. In the 2019 consultation on the draft bill, it said the Commission considers that a simplified system for obtaining legal recognition of gender would better support trans people to live their lives free from discrimination and supports the aims of the draft bill. Obviously, it's for the Commission to say why its position has changed, but I think it's important for me to narrate that it is a change in position. I'm also slightly concerned at some of what I consider doesn't accurately characterise the impact of the bill. What the bill seeks to do, or will seek to do, is simplify an existing process. It doesn't confer any new rights on trans people, nor does it change any of the existing protections in the Equality Act. So it doesn't change the current position on data collection or the ability of sports organisations to take decisions, for example. So we'll continue to engage with a range of organisations, but let me stress again, this is a bill that is designed to simplify an existing process, to reduce the distress, the trauma and the anxiety, and often the stigmatisation that trans people suffer in our society. And of course, the government will set out its plans for the timetabling of that legislation in due course.
Maggie Chapman.
Right, so come back to you first of all, Christina. What did you think on seeing that?
Well, I think many thoughts. I think what she said, first of all, with the fact that they've changed their opinion. So when she stated what they said, I think it was the 2017 consultation, and when they'd said that the 2004 bill wasn't suitable anymore, that doesn't necessarily mean they're saying at that point that they're in support of something else. So I'm not sure how they would change their position from 2017, because the 2004 Act does need changed, but doesn't necessarily mean that it needs changed in the way that is being proposed. And I think as well, the way that Nicola Sturgeon spoke there, it's quite, this is what will happen, this is what we're doing. It doesn't feel very open. It doesn't feel like they're happy to have a debate. Now, if you're the government and you want to bring things in, you have to open up discussion. And also, if you really support and believe what you think is doing is correct, why would you shy away from a debate? Why would you shy away from a discussion with people who have concerns and legitimate concerns? If someone's worried about something, the correct response is not to say, yeah, you're wrong, or just shut down the debate completely. You're supposed to open that up and say, well, let's look at this, let's discuss this together, which I think is not being done. But that's just what I think.
Thank you. Thank you. Robert?
I think she's quite misleading, actually, when she talks about it. She said that twice. It's simplifying an existing process. And if you actually dig into what that process is, currently you need to have, I think, 2 doctors and be to say that you've changed your gender and be living in that experience for 2 years. The simplification of that process is now you no longer need a doctor or any doctors to agree, and you just need to say you've lived in that gender for 6 months, but there's no check on if you have lived in that gender for 6 months, because I could say today that I've been living as a female for 6 months. What does that mean? It means nothing. So it's just, she's correct. It is just simplifying a process, but very, very misleading, because it's far more than just the simplification of a process.
Yeah, it seems a bit of a theme with the First Minister, with misleading statements and comments. John, have you got anything to add on that, mate?
Yeah, nice and simple. Women's and girls' rights must be protected. Everyone should have rights, but there should be safe spaces for women and girls. Simple. And that's not negotiable.
Non-negotiable.
Never will be. By all means, everyone can have rights and identify who they want to identify, but there's women and girls should have safe spaces to go without fear of intimidation or anything else.
Yep, couldn't agree more. Right, I'm going to ask, because we need to talk about your thoughts on things that are happening south of the border. What's your thoughts? I mean, we need to try and keep this as clean as possible, but what's your thoughts on the government in Westminster? Again, we'll come to you first of all, Christina. Just on what's happening of late.
I think it's an absolute disgrace and an absolute shambles. And I'm unsure how they thought things like this would never come out, considering the amount of parties there's been. So I'm unsure how they thought it would stay quiet and stay hidden for this long. Part of me thinks maybe they just didn't realise they're daft. Part of me thinks, no, they just don't care. They don't care about the rest of us. They don't care about people who were furloughed or people who lost their jobs because of the pandemic. They don't care about people with major health conditions that weren't able to see people for months and months and months. They didn't care that families were separated. They didn't care that people were working 24-hour shifts trying to keep the NHS going. They just don't care. And I think it's just further evidence that we need to get away from that. But I think some people are pushing, saying, yeah, Boris Johnson needs to resign. You know, we need to get rid of Boris Johnson. No, we need to leave the UK. Scotland needs to leave and get away from Westminster, because who are they going to have next? Just be replaced by another Tory MP who doesn't care about Scotland, doesn't care about people, doesn't care about those who are actually struggling right now. And there's a lot of people who are struggling right now. So I think it's a disgrace.
But Tory MPs have got three options. You keep your mouth shut, you say the Prime Minister should resign, or you go on television and you end up making yourself look like an idiot because you're presenting arguments people don't believe, that don't have a basis in them. You end up saying you've been ambushed by a cake. It's not surprising that happened.
Right, well,
Hear about it, the more I'm like, is this a joke or is this real? Don't know.
I've said before, I'm just waiting on Ant and Deck to kind of do a TV announcement. We've been taking the piss out of you for 2 years, blah. Right, that's all I'm waiting for, because it's that bad. Robert, same question to you, mate. What's your thoughts on this shower down the road?
Well,
sorry, the Tories.
nothing can surprise you anymore. I just think it's inevitable that he will go. I don't see how he can survive this, not even Boris Johnson. But like Christina said, he's just going to be replaced by somebody just as bad but more palatable to the public. So the real focus shouldn't be getting him out the door. It should be getting Scotland out the door. I think I watched Ian Blackford yesterday at Prime Minister's Questions time. And it was painful to listen to. He asked the same question that he did last week, and he asked it twice. And it ended in Boris Johnson showing the door, when will you resign? Didn't link the issue once to independence. Didn't say this. Like the whole Scottish Parliament, and that's a Parliament with Tories as second largest party, thinks he should go. If a whole Parliament in Scotland can't get rid of him, this shows why we need independence. Like, I can't believe he's not gone down that route. It's a real kind of strategic problem, I think, with the SNP. And I think you always catch me say it this more than once, but I think a little bit of kudos to Douglas Ross a little bit for actually having kind of balls to actually call for his resignation. I think he's been put in a position where it's almost inevitable, but I think actually doing that is almost the final nail in the coffin, because it's unbelievable. The Scottish Tories have to now form a separate party in Scotland. If they don't, they're going to go into an election saying, look, vote for us to have this guy as Prime Minister, the guy that we don't think suitable. And even if they do form a separate party, which would be quite a step, they're going to argue against independence from London for Scotland, but not. But they say it's okay for their own party because they've been ignored. I mean, it tears their argument apart, and I think it was the end of the Scottish Tories. So thanks to Boris Johnson for that one.
Aye. Right. Hold on. That's you thank two Tories now, right? We can't do it again, right? It's just not happening. Right. I want to bring it back up the road a wee bit. Now, because at the end of the day, what we're doing and what people like us, older generation, are doing, we're trying to do something for the younger generation, right? We're trying to provide a betterment that we feel that we can have, or Scotland, when I say we, Scotland can have, for the younger generation coming through. Now, there's been a lot in the press recently, and it's about, for me, it's about asking inappropriate questions. As a younger person, had you received a questionnaire like the sex survey that's been placed in schools, or the free bus pass if you answer these questions, how would you have felt with it? Sorry to ask you this, Christina, but you first of all, please.
So I'm quite upset. I'm too old for this free bus pass now. So
So am I. So am I.
well, maybe we're not young anymore. Maybe we should be in Alba Youth because we're too old for this bus pass, which would have been great because I live on
I'm
the
only
border.
22.
Oh yeah, we're just too old. But when I saw some of the questions they were asking about the bus pass, I was just a bit confused because I wasn't sure how that was relevant to the bus pass. If the bus pass is for everybody, there were certain questions there I wasn't sure why it was asking, and part of me, maybe again I'm just being a bit skeptical, I don't know. Part of me was thinking, well, are they just asking this to try and gather data in a roundabout way? Because I wasn't sure why they need to ask certain questions that they asked. And the survey that they were hoping to give out in schools, I just think that was massively inappropriate.
Ulterior motives, I think, that are behind, as you say, whether it be data capture or something worse. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Christina.
No, that was it. Yeah, I agree.
That's all right. I find it as appalling, and it's good to hear that younger people. I'm not trying to be ageist or anything. I'm an old dude now. Robert, I'll let you ask the question first before I give my thought. Answer the question first before I give my thoughts on it.
I'm not entirely sure about the bus pass. I didn't realise there was any questions to that. But I've seen the sex survey, and I can't believe they'd ask people that. I think on kind of two fronts. I think the kind of safeguarding issue with that, each kid that does identify it, or that does answer the survey, can be identified. And I've seen, I think it was Hannah Bardell was talking about, it's only through if they highlight areas of abuse, but any 14 or 15-year-old that highlights that they've had sex, by law, that is abuse because they're below the age of consent. So who's going to flag this up? Is it a teacher that's going to mention it? Is it a headmaster? Social services going to get involved? I mean, it's got a disaster written all over it. And I think, from a practical point of view, have you ever met a 14, 15-year-old, 16-year-old boy?
Used to be one of them a long time ago.
Are they going to be honest about this? They're gonna lie on the form. They're going to try and act cool in front of their pals. I mean, you're going to get rubbish data, and any data that is real is going to be lost, and it's dangerous for any kids that are being asked it. I think if you're not willing to answer a question yourself, you shouldn't be asking 14, 15, and 16-year-olds. That's madness from my point of view.
Totally agree. Right, so let's bring it up to, let's ask a hypothetical question in two parts. So Christina, I'll come to you first of all. We are in 2023 and there is no referendum. You become the leader of Scotland. What's your initial push? Second part, we're an independent Scotland in 2023, where again, you are the new leader of an independent Scotland. What's your push in that?
Wow, 2023, that's not long away. I don't have long to prepare my whole plan.
It's hypothetical. Come on.
So the first part you asked was there was no independence in this 2023. So I think for me the push would be independence, because I think everything I think that needs to happen or could happen or should happen in Scotland is better through independence. Independence is what is going to make, I think, Scotland thrive. But I think it would be about a discussion. I don't think you should push independence on people. I think it should be people are scared. People are scared of change. So I think it's about giving people that choice. But I think there needs to be a discussion. People need to be able to voice their concerns so we can say, oh, well, this is what we see as the future. Discussions is where it's at. I think if I was leader in an independent Scotland, I think I'd have similar like important issues to push that I would push if we weren't independents, but I think I'd be able to do more with it. Personal opinion, not saying I'm going to be a leader without listening to people, because that's not what I'm about. But personally, I think in the next few years, we should be looking at how Scotland's going to recover from the pandemic, and in a variety of ways. But I think I'm probably a bit biased considering my line of work, but I think especially looking at children and young people's mental health, because I think we've had this pandemic right now, and that's what's coming next. There's going to be a mental health pandemic, and people are going to be shocked. People don't quite know how bad this is going to be. So I think we need to be looking after our children and young people. I think for me, early intervention is very, very important. And I think looking after our families is very important. And making sure our children get fed at school is very important. And that's all linked into mental health. That's all linked to helping children develop. So I think for me, if I can only pick one issue, it would be children and young people's mental health as part of a pandemic recovery. And I think that would be both with or without independence. But I think with independence, we can do more, and we can support our young people even more.
Excellent, Robert.
Yeah, so 2023, no referendum. I propel myself to this Butte House. I think I'd make sure the deadwood that is in the Scottish Government at the moment would be long gone from any decision making. But I think you'd have to understand why there was no vote at that point. And I think it would be because there's no Section 30 order. So I would call a Scottish Parliament election, hold a plebiscite, and get the move on. Withholding that vote, I think the plebiscite's a fantastic option, because the opposition can't boycott it, because if they do boycott, they're faced with a parliament full of SNP or Alba MSPs for the next 5 years. It'd be terrible for them, and that's one way we can get the public's view. If we're already independent, if Nicola pulls out the bag and I become leader, I think fundamentally you have to look to the future. I think if we look what happened with the North Sea oil industry and how it was wasted on our behalf for so long. You see the wealth that Norway has, now a wealth fund of £1 trillion. That's what Scotland could have and should have. And with the renewable industry, Scotland, one of the biggest manufacturers and generators in the world, we have to have that state-owned energy company that Nicola Sturgeon had promised. And I think we have to build for the future and create a huge amount of wealth for our country. And a population of 5 million like Norway, with a wealth fund the size of that is you can do so much, and you can address all the issues that really people care about. I've not looked it up, but I don't know if there's many food banks in Oslo currently. So
not as many as in Scotland.
I think there's a reason for that. So that's certainly, I think, the priority of building a strong future and a green future, because I think it's really important. Which I'm amazed that the Green Party that is now in government aren't up in arms about the recent rollback from the SNP, but there you go, they're preoccupied.
It looks more like they were invited in to prevent any votes of no confidence, and that's the way it's looking more and more each day. Yeah. John,
I'll take you back a wee bit. You never gave me a chance to put the boot in.
Right. Sorry.
Westminster. I'm sitting here with steam coming out of ears, man.
Right, go for it, mate. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
As you picking up with Robert and that said, you watching Prime Minister's Question Time, and I do watch it, it's hard to say, and other parts of the BBC Parliament, but the disrespect seems to drag new levels every week. I mean, they were very disrespectful. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of Ian Blackford either, because I pick up the point Robert made. He asks the same repeated questions. He wastes his questions sometimes, and it's very. I could think of better questions to ask Boris Johnson, and he really does. I say shoot and miss twice. So you're right in what you say there, Robert. But what's really so absolutely hate and find so distasteful as you look at the Tory benches and they're baying like pigs. Can't support any. I mean, there's one MP that's put on Twitter. Bearded Tory MP looks, Richard Eust or something his name is, and he looks as being he's being an absolute beast of some sort, having some sort of gasmic hate fest. It makes a meal at like, and it's utterly disgusting. Remember, this is in the deaths of 150,000 people. They're backing this compulsive, hate-filled, racist liar. And the Prime Minister's questions time deteriorated into just a bear pit of hate. It's everything that's wrong with the UK. It's disgusting, it's despicable, and it's everything that's wrong with the UK. And taking it back to when you see the bent British media going out and speaking to people, they'll still go and find people that support Boris Johnson and his ethos. So Boris is doing a good job, Boris is doing the best he can, I'm not caring about COVID, all this stuff. There's still plenty of folk going about like that, and that's what England's like. It's the British Parliament's a reflection of the mindset in England, who controls the political agenda, basically. So it's a reflection on them as well, and it's pretty damn disgusting. It really is awful.
Well,
You mention words.
I don't mince it, George. See,
and I didn't swear there, I don't think. So.
I think you were all right. See, John's got a hatred for the Tories, similar to most Scots, you know, that have been through a lot of rubbish, shall we say? The most insulting thing for me about that full episode that you seen with blah blah and the Egypt, for me it wasn't the fat shaming. For me it was his comment about him and Mr. Blackford doing an awful lot of work behind the scenes together in order to, I mean, that was a well-aimed insult by the Egypt towards the SNP leader in Westminster. The fact that he's working with them.
When Blackford asked a question about something in the previous stage, Boris Johnson on the telly saying that he was saddened by the death of all these people and apologising to the Queen and all sorts of things, saying what happened. And then when he was questioned about it by Blackford the next day, he's bobbing his head about and looking at his watch and playing with his phone. So that's exactly the sincerity of the man. He's an absolute not nice person.
Yes, right. Now, just before, so that we can get rounded up, folks, I seen something on your Twitter page about carbon capture. So, can you tell me your thoughts on carbon capture? First of all, Christina.
Yes. So, okay, yeah, because I would have posted this.
So you should know about it then.
Well, I never pretend to know everything. And
Good.
I think that's what not a lot of people do, especially in politics. You can't know everything, you're human. So I think it's okay to say you don't know. But we did at Alba have a discussion about this at our National Council, I think it was. And actually the youth, the one that led the discussion, which I think is good because climate change is so important to everybody, but also really important to our young people because that's what we'll be living in this world when it's not going so well. So carbon capture, I think what we posted about was, it basically just sums up further why we need independence, because I'm trying to put it in simple terms for myself.
Good. No,
good.
Myself. No, good, thanks.
So there was a base in Scotland, all set up, ready to take on this new project, and then basically Scotland have been shunned and they've picked somewhere in England. And basically what we're saying is it's so important that Scotland meets its targets for like reducing carbon emissions and net zero, but how are we supposed to do that if we're part of a government in Westminster that just like move us on, shame on past us, and just say no, we're not doing that because we want to do our own thing. So I think that's, for me, pushed further why we need independence, and it's because we have so much to give and we have so many resources, and that the project the base up north was fantastic for it. I'm not saying that because I know, I'm saying that because people who are experts were talking about it, and it was all set up. And in Scotland we have such fantastic resources, and we have skilled like individuals who have worked in things like the oil industry, and we had the pipes all set up and everything. So it was just frustrating, and basically another reason for independence, because we have so much to give and we're not able to give it.
Robert?
This was actually we talked about earlier on how Alba Youth have I hate the term, but safe space to debate things. And that was a point actually, I think just after the conference, there was quite a big debate in the group chat we have about carbon capture. And there was some believing it's kind of a bit of a nonsense, and there's others that were strongly in favour. I don't particularly have the strongest view, but at the National Council, I think Josh Robertson, he spoke on this issue, and it was really powerful. I thought, perhaps because I live in Aberdeen and I see what it's like, but talked about how you don't want the northeast, Fraserburgh, Peterhead, Aberdeen to turn into the new Motherwell, Ravenscraigs, all the coal and mining towns and steel mining villages and across the central belt. And that's the way it's going. It's history repeating itself. It's another careless UK Tory government that doesn't care about industry in Scotland, doesn't care about the lives of people here. And with the oil industry now in decline, it needs something like this. And it's the perfect place to have it in the country, the skills and expertise that are there. But they've moved it to Sunderland because that's where they've just been picking up seats. And it's purely political to the detriment of Scotland and people. And if people were incensed about what was happening in the Thatcher years, they should be just as annoyed with what's happening now to the northeast of Scotland.
Right. Well, we're almost at the end. Is there a final message that you want to send out? I'll come to Christina first of all.
Well, just thank you first of all for having us on, because
You're welcome.
You'll think I'm a broken record, but things like this are so important because it's good to open up to different people and have discussions about things, and you can disagree and that's okay because we're all allowed an opinion. So I think thank you so much for having us on. It's been really great chatting to you. And just to say, if any young people are out there who maybe have never been involved in a political party or are in Alba Youth or in Alba in general maybe, or they want to get involved in a campaign, or maybe they just have questions and they want to know why we support independence, because we'll always say why we support independence, they're welcome to give us a message. We have an email address which is posted on our Twitter page, but I can post it again, and we have our Twitter page, so people are welcome to get in touch and we'd love to hear from you. And if you want to get involved, you can get involved. If you're not sure about independence, have a chat with us and then we'll see what you think.
Thank you. Robert?
Yeah, I was actually just going to say a similar thing. If there is any young people, young is up to 30 years old nowadays.
That's me.
On you come then, Sean.
So if you want to, if you are interested, if you want to get engaged, or not get engaged, become engaged, then absolutely come along. It was something I'd never really done, especially when I was in the SNP. But it's people that are in this party are fantastic. I thought really welcoming, and give you an opportunity to speak and listen to what you think. And we won't always agree, but it's a fantastic place to come and do it.
That's it. It's about debating, and it's finding out where we don't agree and try to meet somewhere that both sides or all sides can navigate towards. John, you got a final message you want to say, mate?
Yeah, I'd like to thank Robert and Christina, because you're an absolute credit to Scotland. And I'm proud of you guys and everyone who's doing what you're doing, because it's happening for old fogies like Peter and slightly younger people like me, that there's young people like yourself who've got the passion, and I will say it's obvious for a mile away the intelligence to see what Scotland needs. So it's you guys that are going to be pushing this forward in the future, when we're pushing up daisies and you're an independent Scotland. So I thank you so very much, and you should be very proud of what you're doing, because you really are very, very important to Scotland in the future.
Thank you.
Aye, I'm just going to echo pretty much what John said, and without slight and with great pride, I'm going to say it appears that the kids are all right. So, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for sharing your message. We will try and amplify the noise that you are making to get more people involved. And please keep doing what you are doing, because you're the future. So keep it up. And it's so refreshing to hear
It's,
Again, without slight, young people speaking the way that you have spoken today, it is so refreshing to hear. Keep it up, please.
Thank you.
I'm going to stop the recording now, guys. Okay. And I actually forgot to say when everybody was on. That's everything for Street Scotland occupied homo-satirical saltire. We've got coming up in the near future. We have Dr. M. Pankhurst. We have Robert Slavin. We have Alba Qualities coming up. We've also got another couple of surprises in store, so stay tuned. Thanks very much and good night.